Hi guys, welcome back to Dan's Reef, and today we're just going to do an update on the Waterbox Frag 145.5. So been a bit lapse on the uploads because I've just been, to be honest, I've just been enjoying the tank really, and I've been fairly busy. But there's been a couple of things that have changed. So one, on the 6th of April, we hit a bit of a milestone between the 3 foot, when the 3 foot water box was set up, going over to this one. The actual tank has been running for, well, the system I should say, between the two water boxes has been running over a year. So we've done a year between the two water boxes, which is pretty cool. And then for that sort of milestone for that year, I went and I saw another fish, which you can probably see, and that's the Auriga butterfly, otherwise known as the threadfin. And it's not a reef safe fish at all. And I'll go over in a minute what he has been picking at and not been picking at. But he's generally, to be fair, he's not been too bad. He's a really nice fish. He didn't come from a shop. He came from another hobbyist who also had a 4 foot tank, and he was in there. But he had some very more expensive corals that he had actually started picking at. So I've been sort of recently looking at exploring more on the fish side, and I've been sort of going down a bit of a rabbit hole with selecting fish that perhaps are, reef safe with caution, or maybe one or two that aren't reef safe at all, and that's one of them that I've picked up. But so he's been in now for he's been in about 3 weeks now, 3.5 weeks, something like that. Tank parameter wise, there's nothing really to report. The NIOS dosing is still going really well. I had to up my magnesium. I was a bit lapsadaisy with the magnesium really. It dropped to about 12. It was hovering about 1240, and it was there for a couple of weeks on test. And when you're sort of testing your parameters and you think to yourself, well, because I log it on the app as well. And I always get like a green dot when I input the figure, so I wasn't really paying much attention to it. And because I'd gone over to the NIOS as well, so I was sort of slowly building up the dosing. It was only when I sort of looked at it, I looked back at some testing from about a month prior, and my mag was up at about 1300. So I was like, well, that's actually come down quite a lot. So that was a bit of a schoolboy error really. So I've been slowly raising the magnesium back up, and it's back up to around just over 1300 now. Everything else has been going great with the NIOS dosing. I've started to dose lanthanum in order just to get on top of my phosphate. So my phosphate, generally from the M90 for the first sort of 7 to 8 months, I didn't have any phosphate showing on the Salifert test kit. And then when I went to the water box, after a couple of months of that running, I had just a general upward trend of phosphate. It was just sort of slowly creeping up. So I knew it was on the increase, and you read all sorts of stuff about like different media. So I left it a bit long really to be putting like Roaphos in to sort of stabilize it and try and keep it down. I did start doing that, but by the time I started Roaphos, my levels were already at sort of 0.80, which was quite high. And before I started dosing lanthanum, we peaked at a solid 1. So phosphate was a solid 1, which was really high. But there wasn't like much ill effect on the corals what I have got in here. And I was between the sort of the transition from the Red Sea 4-part dosing to the NIOS. I was still seeing growth on the SPS frags. So even with the highest phosphate, I was still seeing some growth, which was fine. Nothing wrong with that. But obviously long term, didn't really want it going any higher. It was already pretty high at that point. So I've been dosing lanthanum. I've done probably, what did I start off dosing? I think I started dosing 5 mil a day. And there is a calculator that you can get hold of online, and it will tell you roughly for the literage of how much to dose, and I think on this tank it was to bring it back down in line, it was between sort of 30 and 40 mil, and it has slowly been coming down now. So from when it sort of peaked, I stopped using the Salifert test kit, so I ran that out and I swapped over to the Hannah phosphate checker for phosphate, just because it's just more accurate. As I said, if you're on the Salifert starting off with, there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just long term, you want to be really going for a Hannah checker for phosphate. It's just a lot more reliable. But so we're slowly bringing the phosphate down, which is great. On the back of the NIOS dosing, I swapped from the Red Sea Nopox, which was keeping my nitrates in check at a steady 10 to 15, like always. Every weekly test on Nopox, my nitrates would pretty much always be 10. I'd have like the odd week where you could read it and be like, wow, it's, you know, it could be 15, but so that was always stable. When I swapped to the NIOS, I did go for their product, which is, I think it's called NIOS Zero or something. Again, it's primarily for, it says for phosphate and nitrate, but it's primarily just for nitrate really. It's where you're going to see the improvements. And on that, the dosing on that is a bit different to the Red Sea Nopox. So that only says to dose 1 mil per 1,000 litres, which is quite, and it's a small bottle as well. I think the bottle's only 250 mil. So I was thinking it's obviously must be fairly potent stuff, probably more potent than the Nopox. So I started off with 2 mil. I mean, this system's a 500 litre system after displacement, but I started with 2 mil, and I did that for a few weeks. But then on the testing, I noticed that my nitrates were just slowly going up, and I could see that kind of upward trend. So what I decided to do was increase it. So I increased it slightly. I started doing 4 mil per day, which did stabilise the nitrates a lot better, but I have noticed they're still upward trending just ever so slightly. So I think my last test, my nitrates were between 20 and 25, so they have increased a little bit. So my phosphate's coming down and my nitrates actually going up. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to go back off of the NIOS for the nitrate dosing, and I'm going to probably go back to Nopox, because the Nopox, I just didn't, some people don't like it, and if you overdose it, that's an absolute nightmare if you do that. So it's, for me though, I've always done it and used it to keep my nitrates in check, and I've never ever had a problem. I don't ever see any ill effects. It just stabilises it. I think when I was stabilised my nitrates on this tank and my 3-foot Waterbox, I was dosing around 6 mil a day of Nopox, which I don't think is too bad. So on the larger bottles of Nopox, 6 mil a day on a tank like this lasts for quite a long time. So, and I think they're about 30 quid a bottle for the big Nopox, so it's not too bad. Everything else has been running really great. Vermitid snails are still kicking around this tank, and you'll see in a minute when I take you off and do a little walkthrough. Onto white spot. So the white spot, I've had good success with actually beating it. So it's a tale of two halves really. So from when I stopped dosing Polylab, I only had a TMC Vectron 200 UV sterilizer that had come from the M90, went onto the 3-foot Waterbox, and then it's come onto this 5-foot. And it was only when I looked at it, I was like, well, 200's nowhere near powerful enough for that size tank really, with the amount of water. So I spoke to a few people about UV, especially for ick sort of mitigation, like treatment you could call it, but just, you know, keeping the ick away. I spoke to Rob, who's the pelagic swimmer on YouTube. So massive shout out to Rob. He knows his stuff on quarantine. If you go and look at his channel, I'll put his channel link below. Go and have a look. He's got a massive tank, loads of big beautiful fish, and I was speaking to him about it, and he said really for this size tank, UV wattage wise, in order to try and get a head on it, get a hold on it, to try and mitigate the white spot, he recommended an 80 watt UV. So I originally looked at a DD 39 watt or it's a 40 watt, and it's like equivalent to the 40 watt one is like equivalent to the 80 watts of old UV. And I did look at one of them, and they're out of stock because I still had quite a fairly decent outbreak of ick in this tank, and then when I was actually looking for that UV to put on it to try and get on top of it, they were just out of stock. I couldn't get them anywhere, and I think they're about 260 quid, something like that. I looked at the 80 watt version. I think they were up for about £330, something like that. And there was one company that had them in stock, but the thing that put me off with the 80 watt one was the size of it, because I think the 80 watt version is actually really long. It's quite a big unit. So I was looking for something I could get on there fairly quickly, and I ended up going with the TMC Titan 850. So they do two variants in that Titan range. They do a 550 and an 850. I went for the bigger 850. So that UV wattage, although they're fairly economical to run, they're not massive powerhouses of UV. So the 850 model only runs a 25 watt bulb, which on the face of it doesn't sound a lot, especially when Rob was recommending 80 watts would be able to keep on top of it. I thought, well, let's just go for that for now, and I can always change down the line or go a different route, and let's just put a bigger UV on it and see what impact that has, see if I'd notice any improvements, see if things get worse. I was praying they wouldn't get worse, to be honest with you. The fish, though, of all the spots that they had when I would say it was fairly bad but not catastrophic, they were all still fine. So they're all still feeding, they're absolutely fine. I didn't have any concerns with their overall well-being. It was just the fact that obviously you could notice that they had spots on them, and there was no getting away from the fact that it was ick, 100%. So the TMC Titan 850 came, I put that on it as quick as I could. I left the Vectron 200 on, which was only an 8 watt UV unit, so the bulb was 8 watts. So I left that on there. So I had the Titan 850, which is 25 watts, and I had the old 200, Vectron 200, which is 8 watts. So it was only just over 30 watts of UV at that stage, and I'd already stopped dosing Polylab at that point because it wasn't actually getting rid of the white spot altogether. And then interestingly, what I did find was after that, the Vectron Titan was put on with the old TMC Vectron, and I stopped dosing Polylab, so the UVs were running 24/7, because with the Polylab you have to have your UV off for an hour when you dose at night, and then an hour in the morning you have to have UV off, and it's to do with the hydrogen peroxide powder that you dose in, and it's to try and get the parasites in their free swimming stage to go, to be killed and by the actual hydrogen and not go through the UV. So I don't think the UV has an effect with the treatment if you leave it on for that first hour. So interestingly, when I left the UVs on and stopped dosing Polylab, I've noticed that more of an improvement, as in the spots were going and they weren't really coming back. So I was thinking, well, this is great, real positive that it's turned a corner. I was really, really happy. Every week in this tank, I tend to stir the sand, so I give the sand a bit of a stir and a clean, and I do get up obviously a bit of detritus and stuff that's settled to try and keep it clean. What I noticed was after I'd noticed no spots on the fish, after doing these maintenance where I was stirring up the gravel, I'm assuming that I was stirring up particles of bits of ick that were not hatched, or maybe they were laying a bit dormant. So I did have a little bit of a transition where I then started noticing there was just like the odd 1 or 2 spots, and it was mainly on my Tomini tank, funny enough, and the yellow longnose was completely clear. So I had that, and that's when I started thinking to myself, well, if it's still slightly persisting, then maybe I should get another UV. So I started looking at other UVs, and I looked for the DD, so I looked for the 39 watts, and I couldn't find one. I was looking used and I couldn't find one, and the ones I did find, they were just like miles away, where it just wasn't worth really driving to go and get it. And again, I had an 80 watt come up second hand, which was a good price. It was about 80 quid, for the 80 watt version, but when I measured it and looked at the fitting of it, it's quite big, and even trying to get it in this cabinet would have been a little bit of a struggle. So I ummed and ahed about it, and I've ended up going for what actually happened was I took the 8 watt UV off, so it just left the one Titan 850 on the system, thinking that would be enough just to like hold it at bay. And then what I noticed was when I took that 8 watt off, I did notice again there was like a couple of spots, just like a couple of odd spots of ick. So I thought, well, obviously, to me at that point, I was thinking, well, there is something, even though it would linger because of the life cycle, but because it was like 3 or 4 days after I took that UV off, the 8 watt one, in my mind I was thinking, well, it's obviously more to do with the power, of how much power of UV sterilisation you've got versus what the UV sterilisation is. So I don't think it really matters what unit I'll be running on here. It's more to do with raw power, which comes back to what Rob was saying when he recommended about 80 watts for this sort of size tank. And that pretty much, like, if it was 80 watts of power, you'd be eliminating ick pretty much at a constant, and you'd probably never see it again in your system, providing the fish are healthy and there's no other underlying health issues. But so I thought, well, I took that one off because the plumbing for it was just sort of slung in, so I wanted to make it a little bit neater. So I looked again at different UVs, and then in the end I thought, you know what, I think the first Titan 850 I brought, I think it was 160 quid, and then I went and brought another one. So I've got another Titan 850, so that'll be another 25 watts of UV, so that'll be 50 watts in all. And I'm pretty sure, because it pretty much dissipated on the first Titan with the old 8 watt UV, I'm pretty sure 50 watts is going to stop it altogether, and I'm probably never going to see it again. At the moment, on the fish, I'm not seeing any spots at all, and I'm still only running the one Titan. So what I saw when I took the other UV off, it might have just been a coincidence, it might have just been a little blip, I don't know. But anyway, I've got another one to fit. Because I've got one brand new that's come boxed up, I'll probably do like a little review on it just to show you the unit, what you get in the box. There's nothing really that exciting really, it's a UV, but I'll go over it anyway, and I'll talk a little bit more about why I went for the Titan versus the normal Vectrons, because the Titans are a little bit more money, but I'll go through that when I do a little review on it. But everything else is really, really good. I mean, today is the May the 9th, and I've got a wedding to go to tomorrow on the 10th, and then the Saturday after that, the 17th, is Love to Reef, so that'll be really, really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing a few people there. So if you are going to Love to Reef, then let me know in the comments below if you're going or not, and what you're looking forward to. But that's about it for the tank update. There's nothing really happening. I've got some more corals coming, going in very soon, and hopefully there'll be some more fish. But apart from general maintenance, NIOS dosing, which I'll show you the growth I've had on the SPS in a minute, just general maintenance, upkeep, nothing too exciting really. The fish are all doing really well, still eating like pigs. The yellow long nose and the new butterfly, just absolutely like phenomenal. So the dynamics have changed a little bit since I've added that butterfly. The whole tank seems to have settled a little bit more. The tangs aren't nowhere near as shy of coming out the rock work, so that's great. I think when I get some more fish in here, I think it will just generally improve overall. But on the whole, can't complain. A couple of corals are sulking, but there's a good reason for that. So let's get you off and let's have a look at the tank. Thanks a lot. Right, so here we go guys. Let's have a quick look. I mean, fish wise, there's the new fish. Very, very nice. Constantly out swimming. Him and the long-nosed butterfly, they seem to get on really, really well. And he gets some of all the other fish. But Tomini Tang, he's still there. He's doing really well. He's a bit of a chunky boy. And the silver spot, or the blue eye, bristle tooth. He's looking really nice. He's starting to colour up a little bit more now. He's not really grown massively, but he's definitely colouring up a lot nicer. Coral wise, first casualty of the new fish is the organ pipe coral is sulking, and that's been sulking for the last week and a half now. So I do see the polyp tips come out ever so slightly when I feed and stuff, but generally I think what's happening is because it's fairly fleshy and wavy and a bit of movement, this guy is just, wow, he can't help himself, so he's been having a little peck, and like anything like that, as soon as it sees or feels something pecking it, it just closes up shop and you know, to protect itself. So that's been sulking for a little bit. I've still got my little frag of Kenya tree down there, that's doing okay. The candy canes, again, they've been sulking a little bit, because again, I think he did take a little pick at the candy canes when he first went in, but lately I've not seen him picking at them, and they are starting to come back a bit, albeit they're not quite as puffy as they used to be. SPS frags, again, I've got a little bit of growth on this green one, which I'm still not 100% sure what it is. This one, I'm pretty sure this is like an acropora, but I think it's the forest fire. But as you can see, that's starting to branch out from multiple bits now, and it's got a lot taller. So that's sort of taken off now, which is nice to see. The butterflies, even the new one, the thread fin, he's not touching it at all, so that's quite a good sign for SPS anyway. Zoas are still doing okay, and the ones over this side, they're still doing okay. I have got new rockwork to go in the tank, but I've not put any of it in yet. There's still vermitid snails on the rockwork. I'll keep sort of chiseling them back and doing my best. And then the Kenya tree is still looking okay. My wave makers have been out and been clean lately. The zoas on this rock I've ended up taking off because I wanted to try and get some more of the organ pipe coral to grow onto that rock. I have started getting a little bit of bubble algae back again on that rock, but it's not horrendous. I'm not concerned because I'll just keep manually removing it. It's only tiny amounts. And I think that's it. My mushroom down on the floor, that's doing okay. That gets bigger all the time. I'm expecting that to set off some little babies soon, some extra mushrooms, but we'll see. And then if we come down this side, just share the end of the tank, so we're still nice and clear. But yeah, still really liking this tank. Really like the frag tanks, as you know. And the fish are doing really well. But I'll give you an update once I've been to Love to Reef, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching.